On Chinese maps of Southeast Asia, a bold U-shaped boundary sweeps across the South China Sea, a series of dashes enclosing almost the entire sea. This is the Nine-Dash Line, a controversial claim at the heart of Asia's most volatile territorial dispute. For China, it marks historical waters they say have belonged to them for centuries. But for Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia and Brunei, it's an aggressive encroachment, slicing through their internationally recognized maritime zones. The line's ambiguity is its power. China never defines exactly what it claims, keeping neighbors guessing and anxious. On Chinese maps and in classrooms, the Nine-Dash Line is a symbol of national pride, non-negotiable, deeply embedded in the national psyche. But international law bases maritime rights on coastlines, not old lines on a map. This fundamental clash has turned the South China Sea into a stage for global rivalry, where a cartographer's penstroke has led to real-world confrontations. The Nine-Dash Line is more than a map feature, it's a flashpoint for conflict. The Nine-Dash Line is China's sweeping claim to nearly 90% of the South China Sea, drawn as 9 dashes looping from China's coast past Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and the Philippines. It appears only on Chinese maps, overlapping the exclusive economic zones, EEZs, of neighbouring countries as defined by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS. China says the line reflects historic rights to islands, reefs and waters, citing centuries of Chinese activity. But international law prioritizes geography, not history, for maritime claims. China's refusal to clarify the line's exact meaning keeps its options open and its neighbors on edge. The result, a climate of uncertainty and risk for everyone operating in these contested waters. The Nine-Dash Line isn't ancient. It first appeared in 1947, drawn by China's then government after World War II as an 11-dash line. After the communist takeover, the map was adopted and later trimmed to 9 dashes as a gesture to Vietnam. China points to old texts and artifacts as proof of historical presence, but other nations have similar histories in these waters. Occasional visits by fishermen don't equal sovereignty under international law. When first drawn, the line drew little protest. Most Southeast Asian nations were newly independent or still under colonial rule. Only as the region's economic value grew did the Nine-Dash Line become a source of international friction. What began as a quiet cartographic claim now fuels noisy, dangerous disputes. Its origins are recent, but its impact is profound. The Nine-Dash Line collides with the EEZs of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia and Brunei, creating overlapping claims to rich fishing grounds and vast oil and gas reserves. The South China Sea feeds millions and may hold billions of barrels of oil and trillions of cubic feet of gas. Chinese fishing fleets, often escorted by Coast Guard ships, have clashed with neighbours, devastating local economies. Drilling for oil in disputed areas sparks tense standoffs between rival ships. Even tiny rocks and reefs matter. Owning them can extend a country's maritime claims. The Nine-Dash Line covers all these features, putting China in direct conflict with its neighbours. The stakes are economic survival, not just national pride. In 2013, the Philippines took China to court, challenging the Nine-Dash Line under UNCLOS. The tribunal ruled in 2016 China's historic rights claim had no legal basis and the Nine-Dash Line was incompatible with international law. China rejected the ruling, calling it null and void, and continued its activities as if nothing had changed. The decision was a victory for the rules-based order, but with no way to enforce it, power trumped law. China's response? More patrols, more construction, more defiance. The case exposed a hard truth. International law is only as strong as the willingness to obey it. In the South China Sea might still makes right. The legal battle changed little on the water, but set a global precedent. China has transformed reefs into artificial islands, building airstrips, harbours and military bases in the Spratly Islands. These outposts project Chinese power deep into Southeast Asia, allowing year-round presence and rapid military deployment. Satellite images show runways, radar and missile shelters, turning sandbars into fortresses. The US and allies condemn the militarization, responding with freedom of navigation operations to challenge China's claims. Regional countries like the Philippines and Vietnam can only watch as China cements its control. The artificial islands are permanent symbols of China's defiance of international law. They have shifted the balance of power in the region. The South China Sea's geography and its politics have been irreversibly changed. The South China Sea is a global artery. 1/3 of all maritime trade, worth over $3 trillion, passes through each year. It's the main route for energy and goods to and from China, Japan, South Korea and beyond. Any disruption would send shockwaves through the world economy. That's why the US, Japan, Australia and Europe are deeply invested in keeping these sea lanes open. Freedom of navigation is a core interest for trading nations everywhere. China too relies on these waters, but its military build-up raises fears it could one day control or restrict access. The world's prosperity depends on peace in these contested waters. The South China Sea is a powder keg. Overlapping claims, military build-up and rising nationalism make conflict a constant risk. Naval and Coast Guard ships from multiple countries operate in close quarters, raising the chance of accidents or escalation. China's militarized islands give it power projection. The US responds with more patrols and joint exercises. The US-Philippines Defense Treaty means a clash could draw in superpowers. A minor incident could spiral into a major crisis with global consequences. The region is now a central arena for US-China rivalry, where every maneuver is a test of resolve. The world watches, hoping a spark doesn't ignite a wider war. The Nine-Dash Line is more than a regional squabble. It's a test of the world order. At stake is whether international law or raw power will shape the future of the seas. If China's claim prevails by force, it could set a precedent for others to ignore global rules. The stability of the South China Sea underpins global trade and economic growth. Any conflict here would disrupt supply chains and threaten prosperity worldwide. The dispute forces the world to confront hard questions about power, law and history. The future of the South China Sea will show if disputes can be settled by law or by might. This invisible line, drawn decades ago, now shapes the fate of nations and the world's peace.